Hello, everyone. My name is Ophelia, and today I'm going to be talking to you about foot rot or infectious pododermatitis, also known as foul foot, interdigital necrobacilliosis, or necrotic pododermatitis. So the two main bacteria that cause foot rot are Fusobacterium necrophorum and, Porphyromonas levi. It is important to note that both of these must be present in order to cause foot rot. And by present, I mean in an open wound to cause infection. The reason why this is important is because both of these bacterium are common in the rumen, and they are actually found in the healthy skin and hoof cells of domestic animals. So Fusobacterium necrophorum is in the upper right-hand corner. You can see those black skinny rods, and they can live up to the environment up to 10 months. And the dangerous characteristic about Fusobacterium necrophorum is that it produces leukotoxins. So leukocytes, white blood cells, those leukotoxins kill those white blood cells, and they also are toxic to the neutrophils that attack bacteria. So Fusobacterium necrophorum really inhibits the animal's natural defenses that can really exacerbate the infection. And Porphyromonas levi can live up in the environment up to 2 weeks. And the dangerous characteristic about this bacteria is that it produces proteases that eat away at healthy and normal proteins and tissue. And the telltale signs of Porphyromonas levi is, if you look at the bottom right-hand corner picture in this red petri dish, the bacteria are these black spots here that you'll see in foot rot. And upon my research, again, both of these bacterium have to be present. But in cattle, the main bacteria, or the bacteria that is dominant, is a Fusobacterium necrophorum, whereas in sheep and goats, the Porphyromonas levi is the main bacteria that causes foot rot for them. And there are other bacteria found when we sample foot rot, one of them being the Staphylococcus and Escherichia coli and Arachnobacterium pyogenes. Again, those do not cause foot rot, but they are a common bacteria when we take samples of foot rot. So the affected species is in ruminants, and foot rot can occur at its highest frequency during the wet season, so midwinter, early summer months in the US, but it can affect ruminants at any time. Anytime that there is excessive amount of water in the area where there's mud and feces, they can get foot rot from that as well. So it's really important that not only are we more cautious during those rainy or humid seasons, but we're really looking at our environment. So the affected species is in ruminants. So we're looking at cows, sheep, and goats. Cows have the most instances of foot rot. Sheep, it is common, and goats, it's least common. So you'll find it in goats, but it is the least common in goats. So the signs of foot rot are, along with those telltale signs of the black tar of the Porphyromonas levi, you'll find lameness, reddening of the interdigital tissue, swelling of the foot, causing spreading of the toes, lesions of the interdigital tissue, and foul odor. If left untreated, foot rot can cause septic arthritis, or the horn of the foot will separate completely from the healthy tissue and therefore cause tissue death or necrosis. The transmission of the disease is fairly simple. So we're looking at a ruminant animal with Fusobacterium necrophorum and the Porphyromonas levi living in the rumen. It gets expelled out with the feces, and the feces are then open to elements. So then we get these rainy or humid conditions that cause a lot of mud, or we're by a water trough in some mud that isn't being drained properly. And the ruminants can stomp around, spread all the fecal matter. In this last picture here, it's really important because remember, these bacteria are already living on the outside of the ruminant. And when we introduce an open wound, it's fairly easy to get that bacteria inside that wound and cause infection. So with the prevention of this, we do want to practice proper pasture management. So again, cleaning the manure whenever possible. We're making sure that water is being drained properly and not causing those muddy conditions. When it is rainy outside when it is raining outside, we are allowing the animals to go into a dry enclosure. And we also want to practice regular trimming of the hooves. So you can see this little guy, he's waiting for his hoof trim. And the reason for the hoof trim is that we want to eliminate any extra crevices and places for bacteria to hide away and thrive. It's also important to, if you are purchasing a new animal, to isolate those new animals. So foot rot is also called a purchase disease because hopefully if your pasture is very clean, not a lot of manure around, and you're buying a new animal, you don't necessarily know, or at least not 100% know the conditions that the animal is living in. So you definitely want to isolate new animals to prevent possible infection. And then of course, if you do have an animal that's infected, to quarantine them as well. And what you can also do is treat with zinc sulfate and copper sulfate baths. Zinc sulfate and copper sulfate baths are drying agents, and it just makes the environment of the hoof a little less habitable for that bacteria. And vaccines are available that they recommend to give before the rainy season to prevent foot rot, but they are costly. So a lot of owners of ruminant animals, if the prevention is enough and the animal does get foot rot, they will just treat as the foot rot is presented. Another important prevention measure is proper nutrition. So studies found that ruminants with deficiencies in zinc, selenium, and copper are more likely to get foot rot, just because these are very important in hoof integrity and immune function. So in the event the animal does get foot rot, you can start or continue those zinc sulfate or copper sulfate baths to dry out the tissue. You can do topical antibiotics or antibiotic injections, removal of any necrotic tissue to prevent secondary infections, and keep the infected animals quarantined in a dry area. Treatment should work rather quickly. So if it doesn't work after 3 to 4 days, we definitely want to look further into and deeper into the hoof, because like I said, we can get septic arthritis. So it's really important to dig deeper into the hoof and understand what's going on there. So how do I protect myself and my animal? Though foot rot is highly contagious amongst the ruminants, it is not zoonotic. So on my first Google search of foot rot, I without any specifications of foot rot, I did see human foot rot, but that is caused by a fungus, and it is not the same as the foot rot caused by bacterium in ruminants. And going back to a little bit of the prevention and treatment, we really want to sterilize any clippers that are being used on infected animals so that we don't transfer that infection to healthy animals. So this is just a review. Fusobacterium necrophorum and Porphyromonas levi are the main culprits in foot rot. They take a ride along with the feces. The feces gets distributed through rainy or humid months or just wet areas. Signs are lameness, swollen and red interdigital tissue. If left untreated, it can cause septic arthritis. Prevention, proper pasture management, regular trimming of the hooves, and accessibility to dry areas. treatment, zinc sulfate and copper sulfate baths, antibiotics, and removal of necrotic tissue. And foot rot is not zoonotic. So here's my reference page. I have some information from the Oklahoma State University, and I also have some articles here from Science Direct, small ruminant infectious disease of the foot. And I also have an article here of or a journal, I should say, of experimental infection of cattle with ovine Diclobacter nodosus isolates. And just a quick tidbit on this, the Diclobacter nodosus, that is the former name of the Porphyromonas levi. So it can get a little bit confusing just because there's a lot of former names of these diseases, but this is just that disease of that black tar substance that you see in foot rot. And here's a little bit more. This is a case study here. And then here is a chapter of the book in the American College of Laboratory Animal Medicine. All right, so I hope you guys learned something new today, and I hope you enjoyed this presentation on foot rot. Thank you.